Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, we're getting into what Joey McGuire is selling and who's buying. Next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Glad to be back in the saddle with you on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm Casey Cowan with the only Chris Level. A Merry Christmas week to you. Glad to be back here on YouTube or anywhere you get your podcast. Merry Christmas, Chris. And this is a little bit more of a gift-giving kind of season than normal. Because if you're a college football fan, you're thinking early signing day. And we have got, I don't want to call it a recruiting extravaganza specifically, because some of these guys we'll talk about, you've already seen in your uniform here on today's episode. But of sorts, it is a recruiting extravaganza as we look ahead to what's gone down already this week, what is yet to come on early signing day. And as we kick off today's conversation, interesting frame I thought that you gave me on kind of the lay of the land as Joey McGuire hits the offseason. Haven't done that yet. Got a bowl game coming up. But I've been asking about this a little bit. What is the pitch like for Red Raider football? And I was interested to hear you kind of, maybe thinking it's one of the better ones in the Big 12 Conference when you consider all facts.
Yeah, you know, Kevin, that's a great conversation in that, hey, look, you know, TCU has a lot to try to pitch to their program right now based on the season that they've had and, you know, just first year in a new head coach's tenure. I mean, Kansas State has got a lot to pitch. They've got stability with their coach. They've got some fairly updated facilities that have just recently happened. But, you know, other than say those two, I mean – what's your opinion on who has more to like sell or pitch in the Big 12 Conference? And we can include the newcomers as well if you want, because that was my thought in posing the question to you, just because I think when you start checking boxes and you start looking at the things that Joey has, and again, the pitch to me is a bit different now than it was, say, even a month or 6 weeks ago. And we can get into that, but I was just kind of, because you're getting some good news here and you're adding to your roster. And I think that a lot of what you have to pitch now has nothing to do with this really good recruiting class that you're about to sign. That's the point. That's the point that I bring it up, because most of these players were kind of on board without having you play the season, without having you broken ground on new facilities, without having seen, you know, this staff coach much at all, just kind of listen to their vision and all that. But now you've got some hard data and you've got cranes out there tearing stuff up and renovations are ongoing, and you have a nice little win streak to end the season and a bowl that you're going to go to that you have to sell. So I just thought it was an interesting question to pose.
Oh, yeah. And, man, I just still love the sound of a nice little win streak when I'm sitting here on December 19th. And this is also a win streak that doesn't include Houston or Weber State. I mean, I have longed for the days of successful November football. Because outside of those weird years where you did have a non-conference game or two at the end of the schedule, November football is tough football and it's meaningful football. And rarely is Texas Tech playing successful football in those situations over the last decade. So let me just bask in that glow for a minute. Yeah, you're riding high as far as on-field success, but I think really whenever you do break it down that way, you're thinking about coaching stability. You're thinking about fan support, donor support, booster support, investment, straight cash, homie, into what you got going on as a football program. And you asked the question, who's next or who else is on the list? I'm inclined to think Mike Gundy's got to be on the list until he hangs it up. because he's got far too much success to ever act like he's not going to be a contender in living rooms when you're talking about attracting great talent. But I also think about Dave Miranda and the Baylor Bears. You got Big 12 hardware in your trophy case very recently. I know this season was not what they wanted down in Waco, but those are just a couple that come to mind if I am thinking about who else has got an A-plus sales pitch. But, Chris, I think you're right, because in the case of Gundy, you can't really talk about the long-term trajectory or enthusiasm around your coach and the way this is going. Baylor, maybe there's still some heat behind Dave Miranda, but you're coming off of a year that was disappointing any way you slice it. So I don't know. I may be buying what you're selling as far as where Joey McGuire and the Red Raiders stack up on the recruiting trail, just as far as Joey Mo. We're talking momentum, I think, is all we're talking about.
Yeah, because if you go, Baylor, for example, have changed some coaches on their staff. It did not go as planned. They lost a ton of NFL talent. And if I'm recruiting against Baylor, for example, or if I want to point out what, not that I would negatively recruit against them, but I mean, like, if you're going to counter. If you want to counter that, like, hey man, they already reached the top of that Big 12 mountain. Like, we're trying to get there. That's old news, kind of thing. And we want you to come kind of help us do that. And like with Oklahoma State, I mean, their season this year started off well, but it didn't end well. And then there's been just a mass exodus of players in the portal. Not sure what the quarterback situation looks like there and all those things. So, because I mean, I've thought about it. Like, I mean, if you're Kansas, like your recruiting pitch may be the same now as it was, but I mean, you just don't feel near as good about things as you did, say, maybe 6 weeks, 2 months ago, when they were 5-0, 5-0, 6-0 college game days there and all that. You kind of limped to the finish line a bit. But I just, you're in the rare situation here with your on-field results. But I just go back to, look, we're hearing how, fast this class is. You've added some pieces to it late that we'll get into later in the show. But now that those cranes and those bulldozers and everything are over there moving ground and tearing stuff up and preparing for the future, and you did reach 7 wins, and you're going to a meaningful bowl game against an SEC opponent. And it appears, and I don't want to talk in absolutes because this can burn you in this profession, but it doesn't appear that you're running the risk of like mass staff changes or maybe hardly any staff changes. And again, things can change, and they always do, especially with coaching staffs. There's so many pieces at play and money and job openings elsewhere and all that stuff. But stability has been something that, man, if you can finally get it, you just would like to see what that looks like for a few years, because playing in the same schemes and the same. So you just have a lot to sell right now. I mean, a lot to sell. And you check a lot of boxes. And I just go back to the point of the class that they will get credit for and announce this week is one that really didn't know any of these things.
It's true.
And I think that, so
dare I say, Chris, it was not exclusively built, but in large part built based on the energy of Joey McGuire and like close to nothing else almost, I would make a guess at.
Him and the staff that he put together. Yeah. And preaching that vision when nobody, because again, most of these kids are committed, months and months ago back in the summertime.
Yeah. It's all vision. There's no proof of performance. It's just, this is what we expect to happen. This is what we see happening.
Yeah. And you kind of commit to, I don't know, a bit of an unknown in that Lubbock and Tech and all that, but you don't know what the football program is going to look like. Was year one going to be really good, really bad, really somewhere in between? You don't know what the offensive scheme and the defensive scheme is going to look like. You're just kind of being told what it's going to look like. And so I just that part is the fascinating part to me, is because ideally, they will out-recruit this current group that's about to sign. They will out-recruit them next year. That's the goal. That's what you try to do. Yeah, and
right.
if you do that and start stacking them on top of each other, I mean that's when it starts getting really, really interesting. And that's the part that I'm kind of curious and fascinated to see, because now he's got tangible data to show, to point to schematically, results based, facility wise.
Hey, we're chopping wood.
Exactly.
We're chopping wood.
Exactly.
Guys, we ain't there yet. We need your help, but we're chopping this wood. Come make a hand. It wasn't like you signed the class off of just sheer excitement and then you go 4-8. Then you go 3-9. Then you just really fall all over yourself. No, you had a season that was historical by any measure, because you've never beaten Texas and Oklahoma before in a singular season, and you're about to go play in a bowl game, man. I think that's really a great context to put it in, because you're talking about ammo now being there for Joey McGuire.
Exactly.
Clips, bananas or otherwise. And you're really making me think too, like, yeah, you can talk about a great football program, a big pile of cash, a big name coach, and that's all great to sell before you have to actually put those pieces together. What do they actually look like when the pieces do come together? Hello, Bryan College Station. Yeah, it sounds great that Michael Jackson and Lisa Marie Presley would hook up, but then you saw them at the MTV Awards and you're like, this is super weird. This is weird. Let's bail out immediately.
Oh, my.
You've got to find the right fit, and I think we've seen, at least through one football calendar year, a fit that looks like it's going together pretty seamlessly. And, you really think about what he was able to do, Chris. And I kind of held off recruiting-wise from getting too invested in all the excitement surrounding Joey McGuire's efforts on the trail, because so much came about so quickly because of that just sheer effort and energy, and his staff included in that, that I thought, all right, well, we'll see what happens a year and a half, 2 years from now. We'll see what happens with the class after this one. But I got to tell you, I'm hitting the throttle because we have seen that on-field performance combined with what we know is not only a great pitch for anybody to make, but you've got one of the best salesmen in the country making that pitch for you. I mean, just combined with the actual skill set of Joey McGuire as a football recruiting litigator, so to speak, get you really excited as a Tech fan.
Man, and I got to tell you, I really enjoy in the music of Michael Jackson. That's a weird cat, man.
Obviously.
I mean, but that some of that music. What do the young people say? I think it slaps.
Slaps.
Is that
why?
Yeah, is that
why? Tell them that is human.
And it doesn't ever age. That music that
was his problem as well. Legally speaking, is that he preferred them that way on the other side. I guess I don't know, but if you're talking human nature, if you're talking Billie Jean, if you're talking PYT pretty young thing, then you're talking jams that I'm going to play until I'm in the dirt in my blue jeans with Mac Davis. I mean, man, that's another episode.
I lobbed that thing up, man. You just hit it right in the gap. I mean,
we're simpatico here, my brother. There's no warm-ups. Yeah. We don't need any practice swings. We're just simpatico. Boom. On this point.
You're standing on second, man. Like, okay, what else you got? Yeah.
Whether it's MJ or Joey Moe's pitch on the trail, which we are buying into. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let us know in the YouTube comments how you're seeing it. We'll get to, coming up next, some of the actual personnel, names that we're alluding to that are buying in to what Joey McGuire and Texas Tech football is selling. First and foremost, one of those you're familiar with. He's already worn your uniform, and we'll get to what it means for Texas Tech to have him coming back for another year. Coming up next on Locked On Texas Tech. But first, today's episode brought to you by LinkedIn. Joey McGuire is putting his team together for 2023. You're putting your business's team together for 2023 as well, and you want to find just the right candidates that fit your needs, not wasting any time dealing with anybody that's not going to meet your business's standard. And that's where LinkedIn really shines through. You can create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs right now to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people, cutting right through the fat, getting to those candidates that fit what you're looking for. It's why small businesses are rating LinkedIn Jobs #1 and delivering quality hires versus leading competitors, helping you find those folks you want to talk to faster. And that's why nearly 40 million job seekers are visiting LinkedIn to connect with you, the employer, every week. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege today. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free with LinkedIn Jobs. Terms and conditions apply. Thanks for joining us on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Glad to be your first listen on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. New episodes each weekday, so why not? Subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already, or anywhere you get podcasts, and make Locked On Sports Today your second listen, also on the Locked On Podcast Network, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or anywhere you get them casts. Chris, I feel like I've been living in the lap of luxury as it relates to Rayshad Williams. Rayshad Williams is one of those guys that we had on our eligibility radar. Will he? Won't we? Love for him to come back and play Red Raider football again in 2023. He has made the call, according to his defensive coordinator, to be a Red Raider again in 2023. And I just got to tell you, following conversations about defensive tackles, now cornerbacks, including Mr. Williams, who are coming back as super duper seniors, to borrow a phrase from a Red Raider, I don't even know what to do with myself as a Tech football fan. We're talking premier positions. We're talking old guys. We're talking impactful guys, and welcome Rayshad Williams back to that party for another year.
Yeah, you got Jalen Hutchings, you got Tony Bradford, and you got Malik Dunlap, and you're sitting here thinking, man, you got three of the four guys we were kind of looking at on the defensive side, but to go 4 for 4 here, because it was funny because Tim DeRuyter was talking to the media yesterday afternoon, and he just kind of just talking about the team and everything. He's like, yeah, we got this guy back, and Rayshad's going to come back, and that announcement had not been made, other than that right there. And so we're like, well, here we go.
You've been telling us to feel good about it for a couple of weeks, and I've been just trusting in your good faith. But
they were optimistic about that because, as I told you all along, I felt like that of the two corners, you had a much better chance, and there was a much better feeling about Rayshad Williams coming back more so than Malik Dunlap. But when Malik announced that he was coming back, to have your two starting corners back next year that are both, in the 6'3" range. I mean, Rayshad has started 32 games. He's appeared in, I think, 47. And so this is about as an experienced of a player as you're going to get at that position. And I go back to kind of something we were talking about earlier about just stability and being in Coach DeRuyter's scheme, in back-to-back years. I think that it will make worlds of difference with these guys. But I mean, what's it worth to you, to have your two starting defensive tackles and then your two starting corners back when they all could have? I mean, you think about the way it's ended up, but think about the way it could have ended up. Because what if you lose all four or three of the four? I mean, imagine how different that feeling is and that vibe is, because this will be a big reason why, in my opinion, that there's some expectations and some, a lot of, preseason hype even with next year's team. And we'll see. I mean, and again, we've got a long way to go in the offseason, and there'll be more roster movement and all those things here and elsewhere that will dictate some of that. And I think how you do in the bowl game sometimes factors in how you're viewed in the, going into next season and everything like that. But I mean, you came up, better than snake eyes on this deal, man. I mean, because I thought half of them, 3 out of 4, but I mean, it's like, man, it'd be hard to believe that you get all 4, and here we are.
I mean, what's that worth to you? What means the world to you? More money, more dough, more pros, more flows. Ho! What means the world to me in college football? Cornerbacks, defensive backs, DTs. I mean, just to think about these positions, Chris, that you're now filling with these types of guys just gives me the warm fuzzies all over looking ahead to 2023. I'd like to ask you, though, what does this do for the logjam on the other side? Because I know this has to impact, I guess, scholarships and recruiting and transfer portal and all this stuff. How do you speculate as to that effect?
Well, they're in a position to add, they're in a position to add portal players. Now, not a ton. I do think there could be more movement after the first of the year or after the game is played. I don't know if it'll be a lot or a little, but I wouldn't rule that out. Because and here's the interesting thing. I can't say for certain, okay, that this is the case. But I think you could easily connect the dots on Philip Liddy like not coming back because Tony and Jalen did. I think you could connect some dots that Kobe Minor has entered the portal because Rayshad and Malik Dunlap have decided to come back. I think you could connect the dots that Tyler Owens was a likely starter next year and was maybe going to do so in the bowl game, and that means Reggie Pearson enters the portal. I think
that's so interesting. That's just such a new set of balls to juggle for a football program. You know what I'm saying?
I would suck at juggling too, man. I don't know how they do it. It's amazing to me, especially when they light the deal, whatever's on fire, and it's like you're. I don't even begin to know how
people that made the iPhone and jugglers. Same thing to me. I don't know what you're doing. I'm glad y'all figured it out. I'm amazed by it.
Yeah.
But just think about, Spike Dykes, Mike Leach, God rest his soul. Think about some of these coaches of bygone eras in a way that you just tell them like, hey, well, here's what guys juggle now in December and January.
Yeah.
And it's like good news here because you love to get these vets back and impactful players. Then it's like, all right, well, here's the 2-year out approach. Here's the impact of this now as we move forward with numbers. And I'm really just fascinated by it all. I think mostly just because it's still so new. And I know everybody in large ways is like just trying to figure out how to handle it, I guess, as a program. What staff members do you need? Who needs to be watching this? Who needs to be tallying this up? It's a whole new ballgame.
It is a lot to manage and grasp and deal with. And again, you're coaching your team. You're trying to prepare for a bowl game, and yet some guys are missing practices because they're, or that they've either, bailed out or whatever. Yeah. So it's just it's a weird dynamic, weird time of year. I think there's some unintended consequences here, but I don't know any other better way to do it. I do like that they have condensed the window on kind of when this activity, can happen essentially, whether you get in the portal and you've got to be elsewhere or whatever. So coaches can plan and all that, know who to coach. But yeah, it's interesting because, and if you're Philip Liddy or if you're Kobe Minor, for example, Reggie Pearson doesn't necessarily have this problem. But if you're those two guys, you don't just have a ton on film or on tape for somebody to evaluate you and say, let's now a lower level school, group of 5, and maybe if you know somebody somewhere that recruited you, maybe they're looking for a reason to want to like you. But again, I guess what I'm saying is it's not like you have a lot of stock, in your portfolio that somebody's going to go, absolutely drop what you're doing, go get this guy, let's take him. If you're a Power 5 type institution, and maybe these two
hammer that part of it, Power 5. I think that's really important context, Chris, because so many of these guys think I'm jumping into this portal and I'm finding greener grass. No, you can find playing time. You can go find playing time. You can go find an education. There are places all over the country that will have you come play. But I think about it like guys dropping out of like a blue blood program or an NFL franchise that may be more competitive than some others. And you find another team that says, I bet I can work this cat. I bet I can get something out of this guy. We got room. But is it agreeable to that player? It's just such a big wake-up call. I know we've talked about these numbers before, the small percentage of those who are actually ascending, so to speak, from group of 5 to Power 5 or maybe a Power 5 situation to what they perceive as a better one. but most of them are not doing that. So what's it really? Hey, what means the world to you? Is it playing time? Is it an education, or is it limelight? Because the limelight's probably the most fickle one to pursue.
And it could be, it just depends on who you're talking to, like what player and what do they want? Do they want to really play? Do they want shine? Do they want highest level? Are they looking to play, in the NFL? I mean, or is it, man, I'm homesick? Who the heck knows?
That too.
Yeah. Because I just know this, there have been players / prospects, whatever you want to term them, that are at other schools that you heavily recruited. When they were a high school prospect, if you're Texas Tech, and that they've maybe had some interest in wanting to come back, and they just haven't done anything yet at their current school, and so you're just not real keen. You'd rather take either a high school guy or take an older guy in college that can fill a need and help you right now. That's only got 1 or 2 years left. That that checks some boxes there. We'll get into some of those players here in a bit, but that have made that choice. But I just think I think the whole thing is pretty interesting and fascinating on how we get to this point. But that's the hey, I'll take all the Rayshad Williamses that want to come back, and if guys behind them. If the guy's behind them, because it's like bird in the hand, man. I want to take the sure thing. And the crazy part is, I think a guy like Kobe Minor would have played a ton here next year. Not that he would have been perfect, but I think there would have been plenty of opportunities for him to play and all that. But I guess that's not what he wanted for whatever reason. I don't know his reasoning of entering the portal, but
so many possibilities as you just outlined.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So
who could guess, really?
Yeah, that's right. So, but yeah, I mean, I think to lay your head on the pillow at night if you're Tim DeRuyter, man, knowing you got your 2 starting corners and your 2 DTs back after kind of worrying that they could all bail out, man. I think, boy, you did extremely well there. And I think something like the Matador Club factors in. I think, the way they're treated here and coached and pushed and all that stuff factors in. I think that the fact that you can see some vision for this program and that, okay, we're scratching the surface this year, maybe next year, maybe we can really, start to knock on the door, maybe even kick it in. I think all that has to factor in.
Culture, baby. It looks like a spot that is fun to be, I think, from the outside. If you're an athlete looking in, that doesn't mean everything, but for some who have maybe been in some situations they didn't find all that fun, it might mean the world to them to just think, hey, here just looks like a fruitful situation as far as my enjoyment. And maybe they'll win some football games along the way. I don't know, but you just outlined so many things that are totally brand new things to consider. Like the thought of, well, we previously were in on this guy as a high school recruit. Is that a good thing or a bad thing now that he's making the move as a college sophomore? And God only knows. I mean, there's so many reasons why a guy might be making a move. Is it because he's missing class and he's not getting time because he's a sorry teammate, but he doesn't know that? He thinks the world's out against him? I don't know. Or is it because he's at some ultra competitive program and it's really tough to crack through to the surface, but he wants to be on the field? Well, hey, come on down. We were just 7-5 last year. We still got plenty of spots available. We're looking to climb that mountain further. It's just totally new. I would like to ask you, because you've been hammering recruiting for decades, plural now. Early signing day, I was a fan of it in theory. The verdict is still somewhat out on me, I think, in practice. Has this been good or bad since we've had it in place for a period of time now for you?
Well, the what messes with my head is that you have 2 things date wise that really just throw me off. It's like I'm still not used to this part, and that is you're basically hosting official visits, like major big time visit weekends in June. You've been in Lubbock in June. There's not a soul around. The school is empty. The campus is empty. There's not a lot of juice and vibe and all that
just
stuff.
Us. Me and you, baby.
And it's just level. That part is bizarre to me. You're trying to put your university's best foot forward. Now, granted, you're not alone here. Everybody's having to do this. So that part is really like weird to me, because it used to be, hey, bring them in on, like your game weekends, and then like the December and January. That was whenever you really loaded up. But by then it's, and then we've touched on this, but like there's so much going on. Not that you want to set the date to where, people are able to get, make their news and have their moment and all that stuff. It's just like you do this like a few days before Christmas, man, and you know how stressed out and how spread thin everybody is. Basketball season's going on. Holidays are going on. People are traveling, getting in and out of school. It's just like chaos. I'm like, oh yeah, here's this massive bit of news for all college football programs and tons of kids and their families and all that stuff. And so that part is throwing me off. I do like it though, from this standpoint though, Casey, because it allows it allows schools to, and these kids not to have to deal with some of this crap for like another 6 weeks to 2 months. Cause it's a circus, man, with some of this, sure. The phone calls, the text messages, the social media, all that
early on was my whole deal about being in favor of it, was for the athlete specifically, just the athlete, that if they've got that idea where they're going, they're committed, it's over. I want it to be over. Yes. As early as possible.
And it saves the coaches a bunch of time of not having to like visit and babysit for the next 6 weeks to 2 months too.
Also cash. Those things cost money.
Well, yeah, that too. So the calendar part still kind of throws me off a bit. I don't know if it would ever work, but you hear some pitch for when it was all being discussed an August 1st or even a September 1st kind of signing date. So it's before the season even goes. I don't know if that's realistic, because I don't know when the visits happen, and it just kind of moves everything back. But this may be as good as we're going to get. And it's almost in some ways kind of made the traditional signing date, it's not obsolete, but it's close.
No, I wanted to ask you, is this the main deadline?
Absolutely.
Now? Yes, I think so. 1,000%. That's the way I feel about it.
Yep.
That's wild for me to think about where we've come from to now, but this feels like this is your first shot, which is the most important shot potentially, right?
And what happens is what we've seen, like look, RedRaidersports.com and Rivals, and like the Dallas Morning News and all the recruiting sites and the publications and everything. A lot of times they don't spend a lot of ink on the whole thing. Whenever the early signing period hits, they choose to kind of gloss over it and kind of cover it. But then whenever that traditional date rolls around in February, that's when they unload, because it's like, okay, things are more calm. We've got more time and resources to be able to spend. And that's really when you see a lot of the layouts and all the content out there as it relates to recruiting classes and the superlatives and all those different kinds of things. So it's just been kind of fascinating how the whole thing works. But so you'll put pen to paper with about 23, 24, 25 guys. I guess that would be tomorrow. And, press conference would be early in the, around 11:30 that morning. And then away you go. And then they go get on a plane like a day or two later and go play a bowl game.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and just start calling this signing day. The one in February is late signing day. There's no early signing day. This is just signing day. The one in February is late signing day. I know RedRaidersports.com will be on it for signing day this week. I can't speak for Rivals at large, and I'm sure a newspaper will wait until February. Great decision, dying medium. I can't figure out why you guys are going extinct.
You know what I meant, though. I
just wanted to make fun of newspaper. I just wanted to take a shot at newspaper people.
Yeah.
Big J journalist. So I like that opportunity. Anytime you give it to me, set that ball on the tee, and I'm gonna take a smack at it. But this is signing day now. This is signing day now. Late signing day comes up in February, as christened by Locked On Texas Tech, which makes it gospel. All right, before we're out of here, quick hitter, thrice time. Coming up next, as we're going to get to some of those guys making the call, throwing in with Texas Tech. Coming up next on Locked On Texas Tech. But first, today our show brought to you by Sober Driving. what are you going to get into coming up this holiday season? Hanging out with friends or family, kicking back a few becomes too many, at least to drive. As the evening comes to an end and people start to head out, you're thinking of calling for a ride, but you're like, nah, not going through it. I live nearby anyway. You can make it home. No big deal. What are the odds you're going to get pulled over anyway? And even so, what's the worst that could happen? Your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you lose your job, you total your car, you kill someone. I'm here to say that the final option there, that is the worst that could happen, I think, just to answer that question. Everybody knows about the risks of drunk driving. The results are tragic, often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again, play it safe, and plan ahead to get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day from west of the 100th meridian, where it's really going down. He's Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. Signing day coming up this week. And before we are out of here, Chris, it seems like we had, if you're like one of those families that opens presents on Christmas Eve instead of Christmas Day, this is kind of the vibe I'm getting here. Is we had some early giftage here this week for Joey McGuire and the Red Raiders with some announcements, commitments, not quite signings, but dedications to Texas Tech football. Man, where are we going here?
Yeah, and so at the time that you and I are recording this is kind of how it stands right now, because you could get more announcements between now and when people listen to this. But it was a good day for the defense yesterday for sure. And these are all kids that or players that were visitors this past weekend in Lubbock on official visits, or and so I think really the headliner is you take a kid that had been committed to University of Texas for a long time, named Dylan Spencer out of Orange, Texas. I think it depends on who you listen to, that either he had been committed to Texas and he was like, I want to go take another trip. I want to go see what else is out there. And I think the folks at Texas, maybe the head coach, is like, yeah, our policy is that if you take another visit, we're through here. And so did he call the bluff, or did Texas back off? I'll let you believe whatever you want. I really don't care. The Red Raiders wanted Dylan Spencer. He's about 6'5", 245, 250. I think had a tremendous visit. I think Houston was really in play there as well. But this is a Texas kid that I think came out to Lubbock this past weekend and he's got an NFL type body, measurable wise, all that stuff. I think it is, I'm not want to say he's like a Tyree Wilson lookalike or anything, but you start to see these long, rangy defensive end types, and one that had been committed to University of Texas for as long as he had. I mean, this is kind of what you want to play in that sandbox. And then, we talked about Philip Liddy. Well, they just in a matter of less than a week, you lose him, and then you find his replacement. And a young man by the name of Quincy Ledette, one of the two. I'm not sure exactly how you say his last name properly. I need to get that fixed. But he went to he was a Louisiana Monroe product. I believe he's got 2 years to play, and he's productive and all that. So I think that, while one exits, one enters, and, you're in good shape there. So, and then they go back to Louisiana for a linebacker by the name of Justin Horn, who is a hurdler, a black belt in karate, can run like crazy. And so, he was committed to the University of Louisiana. And, so you get him to switch that up. And basically, I think everybody's excited about the speed with a guy like Justin Horn. So a really good day for Tim DeRuyter and the defensive side. And keep in mind, like with some of these guys, think about it. I mean, Tyree Wilson is no longer going to be here. Krishawn Merriweather and Kosai Eldridge may or may not be here. And so there's opportunities for edge guys, for linebackers, and we certainly already know that Ledette will factor in early because of the departure of Philip Liddy. So that's why this is – and there's also an outside linebacker / defensive end named Steve Linton from Syracuse that was here. I think there's a decent chance that you were able to add him as well. You know, he had 3 or 4 sacks, I think, this last year, a bunch of tackles for loss. I think he's kind of an edge type guy and all that. So I think you have a chance to add him as well. So again, while lots of news is my wife tells me this last week. She's like, "Wow, did anybody else get into the portal?" I'm like, "Oh man, does anybody want to play for Tech?" I'm like, "You need to calm down. One, none of the kids that you just read about played a whole lot. Okay, so just calm down. Okay." But then like less than a week later, because it makes people feel vulnerable. Like portal, he's leaving. Portal, leave it. Portal, leave it. Like, but you have to understand, most of these cats weren't even playing. Like Kobe Minor, backup. Philip Liddy, backup. Reggie Pearson, starter / backup, depending on your view.
Larry Moore, made up name.
Larry Moore, backup. Ethan Card, backup. Weston Wright was a starter. He could have come back. Not that he's going to the portal, but you get what I'm saying. Right. It's, you know. And so you've added a lot more immediate help than what you lost via the portal. But you just, again, people feel vulnerable, and like you see, oh man, nobody wants to play for my school anymore. And I'm like, just calm down. Let these people do their job. And here you just look up just a few days later, and you're opening presents on Christmas Eve, like you said.
These people are just revealing themselves as knowing nothing about being a player, which may be a good thing, but a player knows when one walks away, another one's walking in the door. So I think
I told you the funniest story about my wife like complaining about Tech stuff was I can't remember if I've said this story on this particular show or not, but it was the year after the Final Four year, okay, basketball wise. And you remember Tariq Owens. Have I ever told you that story? The Tariq Owens one?
I have not heard the
Tariq
Owens story. I do remember Tariq Owens.
Well, yeah, phenomenal player. It worked great. He was one of the best shot blockers and rim protectors in this school's history. Yep. If he doesn't twist his ankle or get dinged up, I think you win the national championship going away.
Yep.
Anyways, so the first game of the next season, my wife and kids go to the game, and I come home and I'm like, well, different team, whatever. I can't remember who they played or whatever. But she's like, we just don't have anybody like Tariq Owens. Like, what is the deal? Right. Like, and I say, I'm like, there's not like a store that you go purchase those guys at. Like they don't grow them, like in some store. Like I'll have a medium Tariq Owens, please. And no, that guy was like a freak. He's a unicorn.
Amazing.
So anyway, I was cracking up because I'm like, if you could go to the Tariq Owens store, everybody would be shopping there and they'd be sold out. But
right, and the day after Zach Smith's time was done at Texas Tech, I was thinking we're never gonna have another Zach Smith, and then here comes Tariq Owens.
Yeah, there you go.
They're out there somewhere. They're out there somewhere. Does Dwaylen Roberts have a son? Does Zach Smith have a son? Tariq Owens. Let's get busy, boys. It's time to start a family and send them on down to Texas Tech.
I will just say to you, you do have a spot mid-year that you can go add somebody.
That's right. That's right. Who's that going to be? Why are you saying that to me?
I'm just telling you, you have a mid-year spot. I mean, last year, Jalen Tyson just kind of dropped out of the, just dropped out of thin air, and he's like sitting on your bench. So, yeah.
All right, Chris, I won't make you ask it. I'll fill it. I'll show up. I know what you're getting at.
That's right. Can you block shots, Cowan?
I'm ready to go.
Right. Yes.
I did have, and this line has cracked my father up ever since. This is going on 20 years now. One time summer league basketball, maybe 8th graders. So, I was one of those guys that was just trying to swat everything. I couldn't jump over daylight. And one of my own teammates, good buddy of mine, Dr. L. Funk for life. He's a physician in the Amarillo area now, pride and joy of Sudan, Texas, told me after the game, within earshot of my father, you're a shot blocker, baby. You're a shot blocker. And it was so ridiculous that it tickled everyone's innards inside the gym. And my father still quotes it to me these days. So no, shot blocking, not my forte. But you want a good box out? The dying art of the box out? I'm your man.
It's all about the footwork, man. It's all about the footwork underneath, man. It's all the lower half.
Nobody's boxing out these days. Let me tell you, it's all NBA All-Star game. Garbage. Okay, that's a different show. Locked On NBA on the Locked On Podcast Network. Chris, this did turn into a bit, if not of a recruiting extravaganza, roster extravaganza, because we got into so much of the spinning wheels and all the gears that are turning right now to shape up the 2023 Red Raiders.
I even heard you say PYT, man. My day is complete.
What a show. The bingo card getting checked on so many different fronts here on Locked On Texas Tech. Appreciate the time and insight as always, my man. We'll see you on the other side.
Keep hope alive, man. Enjoyed it.
You got it. And after Locked On Texas Tech, make Locked On Sports today your second listen, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or anywhere you get podcasts, and subscribe on YouTube if you have not already to Locked On Texas Tech so you never miss an episode. For Chris, I'm Casey. We'll catch you on the other side on Locked On Texas Tech.